Mark had always dreamed of living in a peaceful, picture-perfect neighborhood. A place where neighbors smiled as they watered their lawns, kids rode bikes until sunset, and front porches overflowed with friendly conversation. When he found the house, a charming two-story colonial with a wraparound porch, it felt like a dream come true. The price was right, the streets were clean, and every lawn was manicured to perfection, almost too perfect. Within days of moving in, Mark noticed something odd. There was no official homeowners association, HOA, listed in the paperwork, yet the neighborhood functioned as if a strict one ruled every inch of it. The grass in every yard was trimmed to a uniform height, garbage bins never stayed out past a certain hour, holiday decorations appeared and disappeared like clockwork. Never a string light out of place. Then came the letter. A single sheet of paper typed in Comic Sans was taped to his front door. Notice of violation. Your trash bins were visible from the street for longer than the permitted time. Future violations will result in a fine. No signature, no return address, just a vague threat. Mark frowned. Who exactly was issuing fines in a neighborhood with no HOA? Later that evening, while he was out walking his dog, a neighbor named Lisa strolled over, shaking her head. "Let me guess, got a warning about your trash bins?" Mark laughed. "Yeah. Who's in charge of that?" "I thought there wasn't an HOA here." Lisa exhaled sharply. "Oh, there's no real HOA. Just them." She nodded toward a house at the end of the cul-de-sac. On the porch, a stern-looking middle-aged woman and her equally sour-faced husband sat watching the street like hawks. "Karen and Bob," Lisa muttered. "They think they run the place." Mark raised an eyebrow. "And people just let them?" Lisa shrugged. "Not everyone. But trust me, if you cross them, you'll regret it." Mark chuckled, assuming she was exaggerating. But as he turned back toward his house, he caught Karen staring at him from her porch. She didn't look away. A chill ran down his spine. Something told him this was just the beginning. Hey, real quick. If you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. All right, let's keep going. The next morning, Mark sipped his coffee as he stared at the ridiculous violation notice still sitting on his kitchen counter. The Comic Sans font made it look more like a prank than an official warning. Trash bins visible from the street, he muttered to himself, shaking his head. Who were these people, and what gave them the authority to fine him? Still, he wasn't going to let something so petty ruin his morning. He tossed the paper into the recycling bin and stepped outside, stretching as the warm sun bathed the quiet street. And that's when he saw them. Karen and Bob were marching up his driveway with the same intensity as cops approaching a crime scene. Karen's expression was stone cold, while Bob trailed slightly behind, nodding as if rehearsing a script in his head. "Good morning," Karen said curtly. "Morning," Mark replied, taking another sip of his coffee. "What's up?" Karen narrowed her eyes, glancing pointedly at his trash bins, which were now properly tucked away. "You received a warning yesterday," she said. Mark smirked. "Oh, you mean the note with the Comic Sans?" "Yeah, I got it. Very official looking." Bob's chest puffed up. "This is a serious matter, Mark. We represent the neighborhood's HOA. It's our job to make sure everyone follows the community guidelines." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really?" "Because when I bought this house, I specifically checked, and there's no official HOA here." Karen gave a tight-lipped smile. "The neighborhood prefers to operate informally. We act as representatives to maintain order." Mark leaned against his doorframe, amused but increasingly suspicious. "Uh-huh. And by representatives, you mean you just decided you're in charge?" Bob's jaw tightened. "The residents respect our leadership. That's why we have community standards." Mark grinned. "So, if I wanted to check the bylaws, where would I find them? Or maybe I can see your legal documentation. You know, the kind actual HOAs have?" For the first time, Karen hesitated. Her fingers twitched slightly at her sides. Bob shifted uncomfortably, looking at her as if waiting for a cue. "There's no need for that," she finally said. "We keep things simple. If people don't follow the rules, there are consequences." Mark tilted his head. "Consequences? You mean like another Comic Sans letter? Karen's eyes darkened. No, Mark. Like fines, citations, and possible legal action. Bob nodded aggressively. We've had to take action before. Some people thought they could ignore us. Let's just say they changed their minds pretty quickly. Something about the way he said it made Mark's stomach tighten. Was that a threat? Right, Mark said, keeping his tone light but firm. Here's the thing. I don't answer to fake authority. So, unless you have an actual legal HOA backing you up, I suggest you stop leaving weird notes on my door. Karen's nostrils flared. For a brief moment, her mask of control slipped, revealing something colder beneath. Bob opened his mouth, but Karen cut him off. Enjoy your day, Mark, she said flatly. Then, without another word, she turned and walked off, Bob trailing after her like an obedient shadow. Mark watched them go, his grip tightening around his coffee mug. Lisa was right. Karen and Bob weren't just nosy neighbors. They were playing a dangerous game. And now, Mark was officially in their way. Mark had hoped that standing his ground would be enough to make Karen and Bob back off. He was wrong. The next morning, another violation notice appeared on his door. This time, it wasn't just about his trash bins. It listed multiple absurd infractions. Grass exceeds community length standards by 1.5 inches. Front porch light is too bright and disruptive to neighbors. Unauthorized vehicle parked in driveway for extended hours. Mark scoffed. The unauthorized vehicle was his own car, but the absurdity didn't stop there. Attached to the note was a fake fine, a demand for $150, payable to Karen and Bob's so-called HOA. Unbelievable, Mark muttered. He crumpled the letter and tossed it in the trash. That afternoon, Mark walked over to Lisa's house. She was sitting on her porch, sipping lemonade and scrolling through her phone. The moment she saw his expression, she sighed. Let me guess, she said. More violations? Mark sat down across from her. This time, they want money. He slid the letter across the table. Lisa barely glanced at it before rolling her eyes. Classic Karen and Bob. They tried that on me last year, claimed my Halloween decorations were non-compliant and wanted me to pay a fine. I ignored them. Mark leaned forward. And what happened? Lisa hesitated, swirling the ice in her glass. My car got keyed the next week. Mark frowned. You think it was them? She exhaled sharply. I can't prove it, but I'm not the only one. A few months ago, the Garcias got fined for a fire hazard. Turns out it was just a potted plant too close to their porch. They refused to pay, and suddenly they started getting anonymous complaints filed against them with the city. Noise complaints, property code violations, even an accusation that they were running an unlicensed Airbnb. Mark's stomach twisted. And what did they do? Lisa sighed. They paid. Eventually, most people do. It's easier than dealing with the harassment. Mark sat back, gripping the arms of the chair. This was bigger than just nosy neighbors with too much free time. I'm not paying them, he said firmly. Lisa gave him a knowing look. Then get ready, because if you stand up to them, they will come after you. Over the next few days, Mark noticed strange things happening. First, his mailbox mysteriously disappeared. He found it dumped in a ditch a block away. Then his house was reported for excessive yard clutter, despite the fact that his lawn was spotless. A city inspector showed up, confused as to why he had been called out for a single garden gnome and a welcome mat. Mark even caught Bob lurking near his driveway late at night. When confronted, Bob played innocent. Just out for a walk, he said with a smug grin before strolling away. It was clear. Karen and Bob were trying to break him, but Mark wasn't the kind of guy who backed down from a fight. He had a plan. And Karen and Bob were about to find out exactly what happens when you mess with the wrong neighbor. Mark had barely set foot outside when he spotted the black and white patrol car rolling slowly down the street. Unlike Karen and Bob, who lurked around like vultures, this visitor carried an air of actual authority. The officer, a tall man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, pulled over right in front of Mark's driveway and stepped out. "Morning," he greeted, adjusting his belt. "You Mark?" Mark tensed slightly. "Yeah." "Something wrong, officer?" The cop extended a hand. "Officer Daniels. Just doing my rounds." His handshake was firm but not aggressive. "We've had a few complaints from this neighborhood lately. Thought I'd stop by and give you a heads up." Mark folded his arms. Let me guess, Karen and Bob? Daniels smirked. So you've met the neighborhood's self-appointed royalty? Mark scoffed. Yeah, they've been slapping me with fake fines and filing bogus complaints. Seems like they've been at this for a while. Daniels leaned against his cruiser. Longer than you'd think. You're not the first one they've tried to push around. Mark's stomach tightened. How bad does it get? Daniels sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. We've had multiple reports of harassment coming from that house. They call in everything from suspicious activity to unauthorized structures. One guy put up a shed in his backyard, fully permitted, by the way, and Karen still tried to get it torn down. She claimed it violated community aesthetics. Mark shook his head. So they just harass people until they give in? Daniels nodded. Pretty much. Some folks move away just to get rid of them. Others pay their fines just to keep the peace. But here's the thing. They don't have any legal power, not a shred. It's all intimidation. Mark exhaled slowly. He had suspected as much, but hearing it from a cop made it real. Daniels studied him for a moment. They've already started. In on you, haven't they? Mark gestured to where his mailbox used to be. Mailbox trashed, fake citations, late-night prowling. I wouldn't be surprised if my tires get slashed next. Daniels' jaw tightened. Listen, Mark. People like Karen and Bob, they get away with this because no one fights back. But if you've got proof, videos, documents, even witnesses, we might be able to shut them down for good. Mark's mind was already racing. Security cameras, witness statements, a paper trail of their threats. You're saying, he began carefully, if I gather enough evidence, you can actually do something about them? Daniels nodded. I can't promise anything overnight, but yeah. You build a case, I'll back you up. For the first time since this nightmare started, Mark felt like he had the upper hand. Thanks, officer, he said, shaking Daniels' hand again. Daniels gave him a knowing look. Just watch your back. Karen doesn't like losing. As the patrol car rolled away, Mark's determination solidified. Karen and Bob thought they could bully him into submission. They had no idea what was coming next. Mark wasn't going to sit back and let Karen and Bob keep pulling their petty power moves. It was time to fight back. After his conversation with Officer Daniels, he knew he needed proof, solid, undeniable evidence of their harassment. So the very next day, Mark installed 3 security cameras, one above his front door, angled to catch anyone approaching his house, one near the driveway, covering his trash bins and mailbox, one on the side of the house, overlooking his fence and backyard. He didn't tell anyone, not even Lisa. He wanted to catch Karen and Bob when they least expected it, and it didn't take long. A week later, Mark woke up to another infraction notice taped to his door. Repeated violation. Trash bins left out overnight. Fine. $200. Mark smirked as he pulled out his phone. Oh, this was going to be good. He scrolled through the security footage from the night before, and there they were. 1:43 a.m. Karen and Bob crept into his driveway like 2 burglars on a heist. Bob looked around nervously, while Karen, armed with a clipboard, marched straight to the trash bins. With practiced precision, they grabbed his trash cans and dragged them out toward the curb. Bob even adjusted the angle to make it look like Mark had carelessly left them there. Then, Karen snapped a few photos, nodded in satisfaction, and they scurried back to their house like cockroaches. Mark's jaw tightened. They were fabricating evidence. And that wasn't all. He fast-forwarded through the footage and caught another recording, this time from his side yard camera. 27 a.m., Karen and Bob at his fence. Bob was fiddling with the wooden panels while Karen whispered something he couldn't make out. Then Bob pulled a screwdriver from his pocket and started loosening the screws. Mark rewound the footage and zoomed in. They were trying to sabotage his fence, probably so they could file another violation about his property being in disrepair. Mark sat back, exhaling slowly. This was it. This was the proof he needed. Mark knew he had to be smart about this. If he confronted Karen and Bob directly, they'd deny everything. No. He needed them to dig their own grave. So he printed out a copy of their violation notice and marched right up to their house. Karen opened the door, fake smiling as always. Mark, she said in that condescending, sugary tone, I assume you're here about the fine. Mark nodded, keeping his face neutral. Yeah, got your notice this morning. Thought I'd come over and talk. Bob stood behind her, crossing his arms. Nothing to talk about. Rules are rules. Mark tilted his head. That's funny because my security cameras tell a different story. Karen's smile froze. Bob's eye twitched. What do you mean? Mark pulled out his phone and played the footage. Karen and Bob, in full night vision clarity, caught red-handed moving his trash bins. Karen's expression went pale. Before she could recover, Mark swiped to the second clip. Bob tampering with his fence. Bob took a step back. That's not what it looks like? Mark finished. Because it looks a lot like criminal trespassing, property damage, and fraudulent harassment. And I bet Officer Daniels would agree. Karen clenched her fists. You wouldn't dare. Mark smirked. Wouldn't I? Silence stretched between them. For the first time, Karen and Bob looked truly afraid. Mark leaned in. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop harassing me. No more fake fines, no more complaints, no more late-night visits. If I so much as get one more letter from you, this footage goes straight to the police. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but Bob grabbed her arm. He knew they were cornered. Fine, Bob muttered. We'll leave you alone. Mark gave them one last look before turning away. As he walked back to his house, he couldn't help but smile. For the first time since moving in, he felt like he was finally winning. But something in Karen's eyes told him this wasn't over yet. Mark had barely started enjoying his small victory when he woke up to the most ridiculous stunt yet. A bright red notice was taped to his front door. Bold letters stamped across the top. Due to repeated violations of community standards and failure to comply with HOA regulations, your property is no longer in good standing. You are hereby ordered to vacate the premises within 30 days or face further legal action. The Neighborhood Homeowners Association Mark read it twice, then again, and then he laughed. They had finally lost it. Karen and Bob were now pretending they had the power to evict him from his own house. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so infuriating, but as much as he wanted to march over and shove the fake eviction notice down their throats, Mark forced himself to think strategically. This wasn't just another petty fine or fabricated violation. This was fraud. This was intimidation. This was the moment Karen and Bob overplayed their hand. Mark snapped a picture of the notice and grabbed his folder of evidence. The security footage, the fake fines, the harassment reports. Then he made the call. 15 minutes later, Officer Daniels pulled up in his patrol car. The moment he stepped out, Mark handed him the eviction notice. Daniels scanned it, sighed, and shook his head. Well, this is new. Mark crossed his arms. I figured you'd want to see it before I press charges. Daniels gave him a sharp look. Oh, you should definitely press charges. This isn't just harassment anymore. This is attempted fraud, false legal claims, and possible mail tampering if they sent this through the post. That's criminal territory. Mark's smirk returned. So, what's our next move? Daniels cracked his knuckles. Our next move? I think it's time to have a little chat with Karen and Bob. Mark followed as Daniels strode down the street, his badge glinting in the sun. For the first time, Karen and Bob were about to face real authority, and Mark was going to enjoy every second of it. Karen had spent years playing queen of the neighborhood, terrorizing anyone who dared to challenge her authority, but today, the real law had arrived at her doorstep. Mark stood at a distance as Officer Daniels, in full uniform, marched up Karen and Bob's pristine porch. His presence was impossible to ignore. Badge shining, hand resting near his belt, stance firm and unyielding. Karen opened the door with her usual smugness, but the second she saw Daniels, her expression faltered. Good afternoon, ma'am, Daniels said coolly. We need to talk. Bob appeared behind her, frowning. What's this about, officer? Daniels held up the phony eviction notice. You want to explain why you're trying to force a homeowner out of his legally owned property? Karen let out a nervous laugh. Oh, that? It's just a misunderstanding. Daniels raised an eyebrow. A misunderstanding? Because to me it looks like fraud and criminal harassment. Karen stiffened. We're just enforcing community standards. Daniels crossed his arms.
Great. Then show me your legal authority. I'll need to see the official HOA charter, the registration with the county, and the board meeting minutes. Karen blinked. Well, our HOA operates informally. Daniel smirked. So, in other words, it doesn't exist.
Bob stepped forward, puffing out his chest. We don't need official papers. The neighborhood respects our leadership. Daniels chuckled, shaking his head. Yeah? Well, I've got 3 separate harassment complaints on file against you. And after today, I think we can add fraud, trespassing, and filing false legal claims to the list. Karen's face drained of color. Now, wait just a second. Actually, Daniels cut in, I'm not the only one interested in this. He pulled out a clipboard filled with signatures. Several of your neighbors have already filed statements. Turns out, Mark isn't the first person you've tried to intimidate. The city is already reviewing complaints. I'd say you're 1 or 2 steps away from a full-blown lawsuit. By now, several neighbors had gathered outside. Lisa, the Garcias, and even old Mr. Patel stood on their porches watching the scene unfold. Karen's eyes darted around, realizing her power was crumbling. Bob, ever the fool, made one last attempt. You can't do this. We make the rules. Here. Daniels chuckled darkly. No, Bob. The law makes the rules, and you just broke them. Karen swallowed hard, her grip tightening on the doorframe. For the first time in her life, she had no control. And Mark? He just smiled. The reign of the fake HOA was finally over. For years, Karen and Bob had ruled the neighborhood with fear and intimidation. But now, their empire had fallen. Word spread fast. The moment Officer Daniels walked away from their doorstep, the entire street erupted. Neighbors who had once stayed silent, too afraid to speak out, finally found their voices. Lisa was the first to step forward. You fined me for having the wrong shade of Christmas lights. The Garcias joined in. You called the city on us 5 times over fake violations. Even Mr. Patel, the quietest man on the block, shook his head. You stole my garden gnome, Karen. Karen and Bob stood frozen, their faces a mix of rage and humiliation. But the real nail in the coffin came days later. Mark had filed an official complaint with the city, backed by signed statements from at least 10 homeowners. When the county investigated, they discovered that Karen and Bob had been collecting money from fake fines for years. The result? Multiple lawsuits. One by one, neighbors came forward with legal action: fraud, harassment, trespassing. The cases stacked up fast, and soon Karen and Bob were drowning in legal fees. And then, a for sale sign appeared in their yard. Mark and Lisa stood on his porch, watching as the once untouchable tyrants packed their belongings into a moving truck. You think their new neighborhood knows what they're in for? Mark joked. Lisa smirked. I doubt they'll try this again, not after this disaster. As Karen and Bob drove away, their former kingdom now free from their grasp, a feeling of relief washed over the entire neighborhood. Mark raised a beer in Lisa's direction. To a peaceful neighborhood. Lisa clinked her bottle against his. To never seeing Karen's clipboard again. They both laughed. The nightmare was over, and for the first time since moving in, Mark finally felt like he was home. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. Don't forget to tap the bell icon to stay updated. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? Your support means the world.